So if we did the one-liner, I want him to stop berating my son. And can you, in your mind, think of one specific situation? Maybe you're in the car. I know it's kind of a general overall one-liner, but if you can go to a situation when either that is happening or we can even get a little more specific.
Yeah, maybe he says, yeah, you don't know how to say anything right.
So is it in reaction to your son saying something and then he responds that way, or it's just a general comment?
Right, yeah. So like today my son is just so excited, and he says to this friend, we're going to go to, the name of the pool. I took them swimming today. And Walt said, oh, you think that's what it's called? You don't know how to say anything right. That's not what it's called, And my son is just always, his heart is just on his sleeve to be everybody's friend. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. So,
yeah.
It's especially, hard when you see he's just sort of in his essence, totally uncensored.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think there is a world where, our parents or anyone who is our caretaker at a young age, and we decide this is safety. We're in a world of these huge giants, and yet here are these two giants who are so invested in me, and they want to take care of me, and they put everything into me, and I trust them and they trust me, and then all of a sudden they do something where you're like, and we turn on ourselves and we believe, uh-oh, I did it wrong. Something's wrong with me. What do I have to do to fix them and to fit into the giant world so that I'll get taken care of? And yet, it's not only then about parents and people upon whom we depend for our survival. It's about that it starts becoming about peers at a very young age. How old are they now?
They're in kindergarten. They're 6.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't take much. It can happen younger than that, but that especially 5 and 6 is where that peer stuff starts to happen. And it's so hard to watch kids responding to that and coming up with stories about themselves right before your eyes. So this is something that we could go very deeply into as a facilitation. However, we'll probably just focus more on how you would do it. But just to go really quickly through this, we're still going to use that one-liner, which I think is really good. I want him to stop berating my son, and it does still apply in this situation. But it's really important to have a situation where you can visualize. So that's one way that the ego can't wriggle out of this. You have actual data for yourself to watch your reactions. So in that situation, see yourself in that moment, Linda, and you believe the thought, I need him to not turn or to stop berating my son. And yet in this moment, he is berating your son. So I'm just going to go very quickly through the 4 questions, and then we'll do the turnarounds. I don't like jumping to turnarounds for anyone, really, unless you've already worked something, because the mind so needs to see the consequences of what you're believing first. So, all right, come back to your situation, and everybody be with her or be in a situation where you have something similar, like Sandy, you're imagining this child, or how you felt when you heard about the bullying that happened to your grandson. I know someone else who feels like their kids get yelled at by their dad in ways that is different than the way she would talk to them. So find a situation if you all want to. All right, so Linda, in that moment, you need him to stop berating your son. And just say yes or no. Is it true?
Yes.
You need him to stop berating your son. Can you absolutely know that that's true?
No.
Yeah, and again, we talked about how it can be helpful to say, can you absolutely know that that's what's needed in that situation, or that that's what you need in that situation? And then there is that kind of humble no that tends to emerge. But don't ever force it. If you get two yeses, that's always okay too. There's no right answers here. All right, come back into your moment. You got a yes this time. You really do. I mean, if
Well,
you
it just changed.
yeah, if you really feel like that's what you need.
Well, it changed almost. It was like, well, then if it's no, well, then I need my son to not believe that he's a bad person. Okay, maybe I don't need this kid to stop his mouthing off. But then I desperately feel like I need my son to not be affected by it, right? So, but if that happens, we don't go there yet. We just stick with our original one-liner, I bet, right?
Yeah, but I'm writing it down. So everybody, I'm so glad you brought that up, Linda, because if you've got one that comes zinging in and you've already kind of seen through the first one and you're already ready to jump to the second one, it's probably important to try to write it down and save it for later. Sometimes it's okay to come to that one and come back, or you've already just seen through the other story and you don't need to work it. But it's mostly important still to work the first one. You know, Katie would say, love the one you're with. However, I've seen, especially shuttling back and forth with childhood issues, to go to the childhood one and then come back, or even to work two simultaneously. But we're going to love the one we're with at this point and go a little deeper into that first thought, because just think all the times we do believe that stuff. Maybe you saw through this one momentarily, but the next time, or the next time someone else, or your husband, or so coming back then to the moment and the belief that you need the other child to stop what he's doing, and go ahead and yes, go back to the moment when you truly are believing that. You haven't seen through it yet, and be in that moment and work it from that place. So you want him to stop, or you need him to stop berating your son. How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought?
I feel very scared. I feel powerless to protect my son. And then then I say something to Walt, and for the other boy, at first I might say, you know, we are kind. You know, first I try to like reason with him. I try to change him by talking to him, and then by the end today, I just said, "You're so rude." So then I berate him.
Yeah, and it's so important to just be completely honest with ourselves about that. No judgment. Remember, just you're videotaping. You're the reporter. You know, for those of you that are old enough to remember Dragnet, which I never watched, but I remember the saying, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So, what just happened? Okay, I did that. I said that. I felt that. And then I said, you're so rude. So yeah, don't try to push that under the rug. And I'm glad you were reported that in the presence of us all, because that would be what I suppose Beth would call her not so favorite self. So, but it's
Yeah.
it's just what shows up. You know, we don't. It's the best we can do in the moment, and you've got to learn to be with yourself in a way before you can learn to be with others. And this kind of non-judgmental reporting gets you in a good habit of that. So I'm going to ask a couple more sub questions on that. Where do you think you feel that in your body, either when it's happening or right now when you think or talk about it?
I feel my heart racing. I feel my eyes are fighting back tears. I mean, yeah, because there are the two stages. There's first me trying to talk to him, reason with him, feeling desperate, like gotta, I've gotta teach him something. So I feel kind of an adrenaline, kind of like a speeding up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, yeah, for that. It can be that anger and you go through these stages very quickly and go into frustration and hopelessness and helplessness. And so how do you treat him when you believe the thought, sort of like, in order for me to be okay, in order for my son to be okay, all of it is that conditional thought, that one thought, I need him to stop berating my son. How do you treat him when you're believing that thought?
Like he is at fault, like he is in the wrong.
Right. Yeah. And what's interesting about when you have a third party, you can look into that. How do you, I would say, how do you treat yourself? Like sometimes if he's the persecutor, and maybe you're not even thinking about how you treat yourself, but let's say, how do you treat your son when you see the other child as the persecutor at fault or in the wrong and doing this stuff to your son? How do you treat your son then in your mind?
That's interesting. Like a victim, powerless also.
Yeah. Yeah, we go into this victim persecutor mode. Bad, good, or bad and victim. So yeah. And how do you treat yourself when you believe the thought, I need him to
That's
stop?
good. Definitely, I treat myself like I have to fix it. It's all on my shoulders. It's my responsibility.
Yeah.
I have to make it okay for my son.
Right. So we've got the whole triangle, the three victim, persecutor, rescuer triangle. Um, and it's funny how, in some ways, whether you're doing all of that in your head or not, that's the way out of that triangle. Otherwise, it's just like a pinball machine. And you feel a little bit like a victim, too. In some ways, you can go into that where I'm powerless. He's doing this thing. I don't know how to make it stop. A victim, again, without judgment, is just someone for whom something is happening to you without your choosing. So, and then, you then also pop into the role. If for example, you feel, if you guys do that, I just drew the little triangle. Oh, you can't see. I have one of those backgrounds. Okay, so it's a triangle. And if the top is persecutor and one corner is victim, and the other corner is R for rescuer. So you feel you only have those choices. If he's the persecutor, you feel victimized, you feel your son is victimized, or you get in the role of the rescuer. I've got to fix it. I've got to save everybody. So you treat yourself like the savior, the rescuer, but you might also flip into yourself feeling like a victim of his choices. And then you flip into, well, the only way to deal with this is to persecute him back. So just watch those.
Yeah.
It's funny to watch that little pinball thing go around. So it isn't just any one thing. But what we can do to simplify too is to look at how's your heart with regard to the other child in this moment? Is your heart open to him?
No.
Yeah. So, and so much of, you'll notice when we hurt, it's not anything the other person did, it's that we closed our heart. And so we can't see a way to experience this as love, which is our nature. And we are the energy. So yeah, so that's, yeah, you close your heart to him. Anything else under question 3? How you react, what happens as you just sort of take inventory when you believe this thought?
Well, definitely. Yeah, I also felt mad at myself because after the long time when I said, "You're so rude." I mean, I've just felt, I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. So then I'm mad at myself. Now I got to fix myself and I got to get some tools, and otherwise it's just going to keep happening and getting worse. And yeah, I feel trapped, and it's going to keep happening because I want to keep helping this mom, and it spins into the scary future. And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what a good portrayal of how it goes. Yeah, that's the proverbial rabbit hole. Yep. So yeah. All right. So back in your situation, you're driving, you're sitting in the car, whatever's going on in that moment. And he says this thing to your son. You don't know how to say anything right. And there's that moment. Nothing about either of the kids changes or the moment. Just imagine yourself with as if someone who even can't think a thought like, I need him to stop berating my son. That thought is just gone from your head. What's that like? Think about the little boy, his little face. He's over there saying that. And just, oh my goodness, I'm actually having trouble getting to this one myself. I'm going to sit with this for a minute.
Yeah.
Who would I be? And everybody just see yourself, truly subtract that prescriptive thought from your mind. And it can be subtract the thought and all the stories that go along with it too. Sort of like that, oh, my son is gonna, and where this is gonna go and what I'm up, all that. The whole, who would you be without your story in this moment?
Okay, that helps. Yeah, without the whole story, then I would be I would be enjoying time with my son and thinking it was cute the way he's trying to pronounce something that he doesn't entirely know what we said. But I can't get there unless I, kind of remove the third party out of the scene, I guess.
Yeah,
if it's really focused on, I was just going to say, I love what you said before, that usually without the whole thought of, you're doing it wrong, I need to stop this, that I think you kind of offered that you might be curious, what's going on there. So I can imagine that maybe without my immediate, you shouldn't be saying that, that's wrong, then I would be curious.
Right.
Why'd you say that?
I think curious is a good one. Curious about your son's life path, of which you are not in charge. Curious about how to support both children. Curious about, the innocence of the other child and whatever has happened in his background that has him feeling that need to attack, curious about what's going to happen next. And that doesn't mean you're just a doormat either. There might be ways that, if we defend and get upset, sometimes it almost can reinforce the idea to our kids that we think there's a problem or something wrong. So who knows? You might even laugh and say, oh my goodness, I love how you'll try to pronounce really complicated words that you've never heard before. That was so cool. I love the way you said that. Man. And somebody who can sit in the presence of someone else who's telling you said it wrong, and you're still okay. I'm so proud of you. And I'm just so excited that we're going swimming. You would just kind of find a way. Who knows what shows up when you are not having that devastated, this is going badly. You might be that duck with, teach him. But it's hard to say. I'm not giving prescriptions at all. There's just, ways to, and even with the other child, you might say, oh my goodness, I'm sure too that when you were little, all the different things that came along that you didn't pronounce right, it's so cute how we do that, and different people have different learning curves, and it's I love that we're all so different, and you'll get used to that. You'll say to the other little boy, just all these different ways of being human are so amazing, where you kind of help him see a new way. And there might be a proactive thing that you do later with him, with his parents, where you sit down and really sit with him and say, oh my goodness, I know it's pretty hard sometimes to be around, your son's name, because yeah, he may or may not always show up as just like other kids. You might, feel confused about how to be with him. Let's just talk about that. Tell me everything. Like, how do you feel? Is that really frustrating for you? Or you want to try to fix him by telling him he's doing it wrong? Or, maybe, I don't know if you ever have a chance to have that conversation with the child to sort of help him normalize his own struggle with what to do with this, and all of those might be options. So I don't mean to be like putting a whole lot of prescriptions, but just when we get out of other people's business, if the mind is focused on, and I didn't ask you this, whose business are you in when you talk about how someone else should show up, is and you're in his business, and you're in your son's business of how he reacts. So you're in everybody's business, God's business, all of it, I think. But anyway, when we come back out of that and we go, what is my business? And what does showing up like love look like? A way that's going to feel really good for me too, as well as support my son and the other child in just their ways of being human. And when we come out of their business, we just see a flood of options. So and now coming back to you, anything else about who you would be in that moment if the mind weren't so sure that he has to change?
Yeah, I love all that. And I feel like I've had glimpses of that. I've been able to do that for some weeks and months, and it's wearing on me. And I feel the flip side, the negative is I feel on eggshells, because even if I were to try to stand up for Michael and say, "Oh, Michael, I love how I feel like I've said stuff like that before. I love how you're trying, even though it's hard for you." And the kid will just say, "No, he's not. He's not
Well, you can
trying."
even just say,
Something ridiculous.
I love how you said that. Oh my goodness, and I still say things wrong all the time when I come on to new words. Yeah, and like you said, again, if
Amen.
the little boy is, and it may mean something about sitting down with him or sitting down with his mom, and there are times when we have to say, all right, I need some empowerment around this. You may need some consequences for him. Or you may have to say, you know what? My first job is to protect not only the parts of me that really just can't handle this because I'm just not there yet and it's painful for me. And that's okay to acknowledge that. That's you standing for the littlest parts of you and saying, yes, I'm evolving. Yes, I'm using a whole lot of situations in my life to grow myself, but this one is too frequent, too in my face, too hard, and too scary for me when it comes to the well-being of my son. And if you, as the mama lion, that protective instinct that comes out for your son, and you decide to set a limit around this car ride thing and say, we've got to have some consequences. Maybe we're going to ride in silence. Maybe that's how it happens. But it could be happening on the playground. It could be happening everywhere. And, it's a real thing. And just because we can move into love doesn't mean we need to stand in the face of abuse or turn a blind eye or be a doormat. So there's always choices to make, and you will kind of know what you need to do when you see yourself doing it and see how it feels. But the more you work your side, the cleaner it gets, and the more you see your choices. So I'm glad you're doing this.
Amen. Yeah.
All right.
And so I definitely see that I'm in both kids' business and God's business. And I guess I got a real sense of, yes, so how would I feel? I would feel safe. I guess that's what it comes down to without all that thought. If I felt safe that my son is going to listen to me, that he's good, that he won't get rocked by somebody else, then I would feel safe.
So quickly, then let's go back to those turnarounds. So turn the thought around. Let's come back to your moment and see if you can get back in the feeling of it. Could somebody help me if you guys chime in and we'll come up for options with them? So I need him to stop berating my son. There's 3 turnarounds to the self, the other, and the opposite. And we don't necessarily need them to do them in any order, just what comes to you. Can anyone throw out a turnaround for us? Or
First,
Linda,
the
if you've
opposite.
got
I
one.
don't need.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't need him to stop berating my son.
Okay, so that may be a hard one to find. Can you give us 1, 2, even 3 genuine examples of how that could be as true or truer than the idea that you do need him to?
Well, for one thing, kind of like everybody's saying, I mean, this may be exactly a good situation where I can be present, that this is happening around me. Thank God, not on a playground where I'm not there, but somewhere right with me so that I can model and help him learn how to deal with stuff like this, people like this. So I don't need him to stop berating my son because this way I get to help my son.
Yeah, and this way you get to help yourself. That's almost like a second example that you got to show up here tonight with the support of these amazing women and to find other ways to think about it and support yourself. I get to help my son, but first I get to help myself. So that, yeah. So there's
Yeah, I guess I can see that. Yeah, because that's why I was hoping to work with this, because I get, like a panic attack thinking of talking to the other mom if it's too charged. Like, your son is being so mean. I need you to talk to him to be nice to my son, right? It's not going to come off well. But if I
so
don't
good to do your
need
own.
that,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
That is so great when you
and
do
I can
your
do
own
this.
work. Yeah, and then you can come in having really thought it through and hold her with whatever her challenge is and be compassionate for both kids because you've done your own work.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I guess, I would want to feel like there's enough light for all of us in this situation. Like you said, compassion. So that's where because I can draw on, a spiritual walk. I can get more faith with God. I can stand in knowing that there's enough light for this little boy and my son and me and the mom, and hopefully walk it out.
Yeah, amazing. It reminds me of the turnarounds for number 6, which if you guys got a chance to go back and listen to the end of our last session, Beth stayed on and we talked a little more about the inquiry that she had done. And we went into the turnarounds for number 6, which are I am willing to, I look forward to. So just a little side diversion here, Linda. If you had done a worksheet on this child and at the very end, I don't ever want to hear him berating my son again, then the turnaround is, okay, I'm not in charge of reality as it shows up. So I'm going to be willing. I'm going to say, bring it on. Whatever reality happens, I'm willing to hear him berate my son again. And that's where you find and you help out the little kid parts of you that are freaking out when that happens. You find these strategies, like you said, A really good example, everyone, or a way to ask yourself whenever you're looking for examples for the turnaround to the opposite, is to say, how could this be a good thing for me, for the other, for the planet? So you could even find examples of how, as you take proactive action, as you model for him, as you even set limits and say, sorry, we can't give you rides anymore because we haven't figured out this bullying thing, or whatever you decide to call it when you talk with his mom or the principal or whoever you engage to help you. All of that could be good for this boy too in the long run. Really good. And the fact that you, like you said, that you found it's a good thing that at least it's happening when I'm present, so that I can get some help for myself, I can get some help for him and for the other child. And then just, I would say, as 100%, we always like to go to the turnaround. Maybe someone in the audience can help me. So the one-liner, I don't need him, the turnaround, I don't need him to stop berating my son because he isn't. Right. I don't need him to stop unless he stops. I don't need him to stop until he stops. You know, you're not in charge of what shows up in reality. So how you will know when it's time for him to stop is when you notice him stopping. And having that attitude helps you notice all the times when he's not berating your son. And then you start to become more grateful for whatever is there. But also make choices about how to handle the times when he is, to say, well, instead of needing him to change, well, in this moment, at least, he's not changing. In this moment, you're just staging an argument with reality. But honestly, you know, if you go with the idea, how do we know what we need? We look and see what we have. That's all there is. And beyond that, it's a mind that would say, I need something different. I need him to stop. But you're like, oh, okay, but he's not stopping. Not yet, at least. Maybe he'll never do it again, except in your mind. But for now, in that moment, he hadn't stopped yet. So you don't need him to stop. That's how you know. That's God's will, you know, realized, whatever shows up. Okay, then the turnaround to give me another turnaround. We got the self or the other. I need him to stop berating my son. Make sure that you don't turn around the I don't need him to stop. That's one turnaround. Then you go back to the main one-liner, the original one. Everybody write it down even if you want. I need him to stop berating my son. Can somebody give me another turnaround?
Would it be I need me to stop berating my son?
Right.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, so you can find examples of how you're berating your son, even right there in that situation, but also in other times, even if it's only in your mind. And it might be hard to do that here in the presence of us, but in the privacy of your own worksheet, you know, you can probably find 20 of them. I used to write a lot of turnaround examples once I got going. So always look for, how are you doing to yourself and the other what you thought was being done. So
yeah, I mean, it's humbling. I didn't see it before. At first, I'm like, how on earth does this apply to me? But I mean, if I got triggered by it, then there must have been a part of me that also thought Michael said it wrong and that we can't say anything about it, even though he said it wrong. But if I 100% felt like it's okay, then I would be able to show up either saying it's okay, believing it's okay, saying anyway. So it actually is there.
yeah, and you might have to stretch the definition of berating. Maybe you don't feel bad you're not mean to him in your mind, but on some level, your lack of faith in him to overcome the bullying, to overcome the pronunciation, all of that sort of lack of projection onto him as a kid who's in trouble starts to come through, whether we want to call it berating or not. But if berating means, to make smaller, to tear down, that kind of thing, then you can probably find examples. If it's your fear for him that's partly driving although we don't want any kid to get bullied, so there's that too. But it's still really just there for you. And what about other times where you're just frustrated with him and you might berate him either to his face or in your mind? I think we talked about that when you very first went into guilt, about when you started seeing, turnarounds and things.
Yeah.
So you can just sort of look for those and be gentle with yourself. It's not like this is bad, this is wrong. It's just okay, if my buttons are getting pushed by someone else's behavior, usually it's like you spot it, you got it. Somewhere in there, you're probably doing it too. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, that's sad, but it's some power coming back that I know. If I know that I'm not doing it, then I might feel less threatened by some other little baby 6-year-old doing it. So it feels more, there's more power there.
Yeah, and you can find compassion for yourself if you remember that there's fear. Even when you're angry or frustrated with him, remember I can't find a time when there isn't fear under anger. I mean, that's helped some of the people in this group a lot to have compassion for their judgmental self, to say, wow, clearly I was fearing something. Otherwise, why would I be angry? And fearing that something could be hurting me or hurting someone I love. So that fear allows you to be more gentle with yourself. Even if you're berating him, it's either a fear for yourself of being a mom of a child who might have needs for the rest of his life, fear for him that he'll never get to be a happy kid, all of it. It's all okay. It's just so you can be kind to yourself, and at the same time you can find it and find how it's also creating a reality here that you might not always want. And then you can write those thoughts down, those fears, and question them and help yourself with them. So let's go turn around to the other. This can get tricky when there's two people. So let's try that. So again, a one-liner was, I need him to stop berating my son. And we did the opposite. I don't need him to stop. And we did the self, I need me to stop. What's the other, or one of the others?
I guess do two for this one. I need me to stop berating myself, and I need me to stop berating him, the other child.
Right. I think you're right, Sandy, that actually the berating myself would have been the turnaround to the self. And there are two others. I need me to stop berating my son, and I need me to stop berating the other child. Yeah, so we've already seen one example of how you berated the other child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably spend more time berating him in your mind, in your fear of what's going to happen, what did happen, and berating yourself than anything that happened right in that moment in the car, right? So you can probably find lots of examples.
So I see I need me to stop berating him, and that's a tough one, to see him as, whatever, to keep my heart open to him and stop judging him.
So one thing that helps me is if you think about your son having developmental stages, we all do. Like somehow we're really patient with kids learning to read in the beginning. Like, oh, we're so excited they learned their letters, but we don't expect them to read a word yet. We don't get mad at them for not being able to read a word. And then we get to the point where we start worrying because we have a standard for they're supposed to read, it's supposed to look like this. But in the beginning, whether they're learning to walk, it doesn't matter how much we model walking for them. It doesn't matter if we take their feet and move them forward. They're going to walk when they walk. And the same is true if you think about your compassion for your son not being able to pronounce that word. So give this kid that same compassion, possibly. That might be a way out in terms of emotional intelligence. He doesn't know how to handle his angst around your son's behavior. So you can find that, well, that's his learning curve or his developmental disability, is he doesn't know another way to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
It's if we
Thanks,
can
that's
think,
helpful, because I was,
yeah, for all of us, all the things we get mad at ourselves about. Okay, that's just where we're at in the spiritual journey. All right, there's one I don't know how to do yet. If I did, I would. So go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, thanks so much. It's helpful because sometimes I thought, well, do I just say I need to stop, berating him? That's the whole, I got in the danger of feeling like the doormat, oh, I just need to stop. Would I just say that, even though everything in me doesn't want to, it felt like my only defense mechanism to protect my son. But that, even that bit you just said helped. But I need to, that's the thing, keeping my heart open, see that that's where he's at, and that he's possible, instead of keeping him stuck in a box that this is how he's always going to be for the rest of his life, allow him life to move through him, that allow him growth.
Yeah, and your compassion for him might teach him what he hasn't learned yet at home or anywhere else. So ultimately, yeah, and when you think about it, if with these turnarounds is in order for me to be happy, in order for me to be at peace. So it's not a prescription like you need to do this differently. Don't ever hear a turnaround to the should or the needs as that. It's more, oh, if I want to be happy, if I want to be at peace, if I want to be connected, I would need to X. So that brings the whole game back home. And you don't have to wait for him to change. Your work is, like I said, very biblical, the golden rule. Give him the very same thing you want him to give your son. That's really your stretch and your edge of your, he's the Buddha. He's there to evolve you. He's going to keep showing up and doing that until you get this, so, and if it's not him, it'll be something else. And, we're the rescuer in you, or the part that where our monkey mind wants to play God, and we abandon ourselves and we abandon our child and we abandon the other person because we ally ourselves with a story. I need this to be different. When in fact, the thing that's showing up is exactly what you need. That's going to evolve you more than anything else back to love.
Amen.
Yeah. So, wow. Thank you.
Okay, so that really one. And then the last one, thank you, Sandy. I didn't see the turnaround to self of I need me to stop berating me.
Right.
So that's,
yeah, and you can definitely see how you berate yourself. I'm not a good enough mom. I went in and I shouldn't have said that. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to save him. But the idea of berating, where your mind is telling you, if I stop berating him, that means I'm a doormat. So just watch that. Watch those polarities that your mind created. So one of the sub questions that we don't always use, it's sort of a little more advanced thing that I work with people more during the Aligned Action Adventure group, or when you're training to be a coach, but you can do it at any time, is under question 3, where you go, what do I fear would happen if I stopped believing this thought? If I were somehow spared that thought. So we look at that a lot, like, anyway, where you've gotten that this thought is helping, is it true? Where a thought that kept coming back in, we had to go under it to the motivation part. So your mind believes that if you were to drop the berating him, that would be equivalent to doormat or just condoning his behavior or letting him get away with it. But there are other ways to do this besides berating him that are much more empowered and proactive. So you can look at your berating him and saying, yes, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm berating myself for berating him, I'm doing all of that. And just notice the cost to you of all of that. But that doesn't take away your choices or your ability to address the situation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I think, yeah, that's such a beautiful place to end with this, because ultimately, I would love it if there were some way for your relationship to this boy to be something almost pivotal in his life, because you're able to find that compassion, and you just, don't know what's going on for that child at home, and for you to be that force, and we also have to make choices. You've got your own inner needs, your own child's needs, all of that. And this may not be the battle you want to fight, but you can turn him over with love to someone who can help more, and to something greater than your mind saying he's bad and it's all going wrong because of this. It's like we can turn that around and say it's all going right because of this, because of you showing up and not just going down that same rabbit hole, and knowing that there's another way. Anything else, Linda?
Yes.
Parting words, yeah.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Yep.